All right. So exciting to see everyone's chats. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started in just a minute. All right, friends. Hello. Happy Wednesday morning. Happy CVPD day. We're really excited to be on with you, to be live streaming with you. Thank you for jumping on and learning in this new world how we're going to continue to navigate and stay connected, even though we can't be in person. So go ahead and go to the next one, please, Melissa. Yeah. So for our new kickoff, our new school year for the 2020-2021 school year, um, just a little bit of rebranding, not new branding, but just a little adjustment that, we had Leading with Heart was our first kind of iteration a couple years back. And then we shifted that to Students at Heart, thinking about how both we are students, always first and foremost learning, like today, learning how to do live stream, learning how to collaborate with 800 people virtually. But at the same time, we are keeping our students at heart. And I think this year, with so much technical things to think about and so much things to try to learn and adjust to, we got to keep remembering that the students are still the focus of every single thing that we do. And so with that, slapping a logo and saying we're keeping it this real, keeping students at heart is the right way to enter into this year. So yeah, just welcome. Got a few shots of what the end of 2020 looked like, which is really exciting. You can see some of those shots, students making masks, our promotional ceremonies, see ATSA's drive-through, I see some Zooms, Ben Holt's graduation promotion ceremonies, just really exciting stuff that you were able to coalesce around our students, even in these really difficult times. So yeah, let's get rolling. Let's move.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you on YouTube. So I just wanted to go over our agenda for today. So we have our welcome back, and shortly Tony and Mala will be going into our State of Aspire. And then with Keeping Students at Heart, we have a great student panel lined up for you. And then we want to keep your voice centered as well. So we have Padlet that we're going to be utilizing as well. And it's going to be dropped in the chat box for you and is also in the agenda. Then we'll spend a little bit of time just framing for the next 2 days. And as you look at our objectives, these are really our objectives that we're hoping for today and tomorrow. So we have some really rational outcomes that we're looking for, where we're going to talk about our big rocks. We'll talk about our instructional philosophy tomorrow. We'll talk about some synchronous and asynchronous instructional practices tomorrow as well. So really like tactical outcomes that we'll have. And then our relational outcomes, what we're looking for is we're really looking forward to building affiliation for this coming year. And we get to partner with the Steve Bay and LA for some of our sessions. So we're really excited about that. We're going to connect and ground in our equity belief statements. We want to really collectively uphold high standards for all of our students to serve the whole child. And then we really want to think about you and how to increase your personal resilience through engaging in affinity and equity spaces. So we're excited to launch into these 2 days with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melissa. So yeah, we're going to jump in and we're going to talk a little about where we're at as an organization and as a Central Valley. We'll kind of go over some things, introduce some folks, and then talk about what are the big initiatives and imperatives that we're trying to accomplish for this year. But before I do that, I want to just give a gigantic thanks to quite a few folks, but especially to Melissa and Kat. You know me, you know who I am, Area Superintendent Tony Salina, and I serve you all. Every person on this call, my job is to serve. And I know that Kat and Melissa bring that same servant heart, so they're going to introduce themselves. But first, I just want to shoot shine their way, because all of this wouldn't be possible, including the collaboration across the organization, and especially for our IT who's in the background managing our live stream right now. Abner, thank you for helping us out and keeping us coordinated. And then of course for Carol and Kelly, who are in the background as well, making sure that you're getting a surprise goodie bag that's going to be delivered today to your schools that I'm not even gonna show you a picture. It's gonna be a surprise. So with that, we're just here to serve you, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing. And so I'll pass it over to Kat.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm so excited for this year, excited to support our region. And in addition to serving at some of our schools as the key support, I'll also be hosting our region-wide instructional leadership team. We used to call it the Central Valley Instructional Program Team, and we are rebranding it to the Instructional Leadership Team. And I'm excited that we're going to be partnering with the Equity Working Group and really making sure that we're critical consumers of our curriculum and assessments this year to really provide the best resources for our students. I'm also going to be serving as a resource for our cross-school collaboration teams. We had a great start in the spring, and we're really looking forward to continuing that this year. And then finally, just lifting and celebrating some best practices across the region is one area that I hope to focus on and help serve you.
All right, good morning again. So I am so excited to be in service of you this school year. So just similar to Tony and Kat, I get to serve several schools in our region. And in particular, I host our equity working group, as well as support with our supporting admin and partner with Kat on our Central Valley instructional leadership team this year. And as I think through how I want to ensure that I'm in service of you and in service of us, our scholars, I'm really thinking through our culturally responsive teaching, how we are thinking through anti-racism and thinking through our practices to ensure that we're keeping our students at the center and how we're continuing to serve our Black students as well. So I'm really excited to be in service of you this school year.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And so, yeah, this slide is not a study in the Hair Club for Men. It is me as about a 6-year-old and me my last year as principal at Langston Hughes. I love this slide. One, I've used it with the new teacher training. So for those of you that have seen it, sorry, you get to see it again, because I think about Ramiro, who's there holding his diploma. I got a chance, that was about 3 years ago. I got to see Ramiro, 4 years, got to see Ramiro again at his current job. He just graduated from Sac State. He is about to become a teacher. He wants to teach history at the high school level. I told him he had to do it for Aspire. And he really attributed that to one of his teachers, Peter Mueller, and the inspiration that he had from his history class back at Langston. So one, want to give a shout to Peter for transforming lives and really giving the inspiration. But then two, just say that that's what this is all about. I think having been in the game long enough and watched students come from starting with us in kindergarten to graduating with us to now coming full circle and teaching with us, it's why I do the work. And I think about how we have created an environment here in the Central Valley where it feels like family and it feels like home. And I know many of you know that we lost a student recently, a recent graduate, Angel, from a car accident. And so even then, I watch how our community rallies around our students and our families, and that they come back and our teammates come back to really honor students in all their ups and downs and goods and bads. And so I tell my story because I remember I was that little kid with the cowboy boots on and the blonde fro, and my teachers were always so nice to me, and I didn't understand why, but I realized I was that kid that I have a radar for in classrooms, that kid that might have been a little dirty, might have not been quite as prepared as everybody else, that was a attention monger and really hungry to be loved and paid attention to. And I tell the story about being in the late birds kindergarten class because I think my mom couldn't get me up and awake and to school on time. And I kind of figured out early on that that was the track for students that were struggling. And I wanted to be an early bird so bad because my friend Glenn down the street was an early bird. And I was even at 5 years old trying to figure out how do I get on the right track and get on the, what seemed to be the better school experience. And so for me and for our kids, I don't want them to perceive a different track. I want Aspire to be the better track. I want every student in every one of our schools to have the same experience and feel like they are getting a world-class education, that they're loved and seen and felt, and that they're getting exactly what they need. And so as we dive into today, I think that's the important part that we're thinking about. We're going to talk about academics and we're going to talk about social emotional, but it all starts with how do we make students feel, and do they really feel engaged and bought into our system. And so with that, we are so lucky and honored and privileged to have Mala Batra, our CEO, here today. She's going to be joining me in the kind of state of Aspire, state of Central Valley. And so I will kick it over to her to tell a little bit about her why.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks. It's so nice to be here with all of you, although doing it in a different way than we're certainly used to, but it gives us the opportunity to be together in a lot of spaces that we didn't always have. So grateful for that, and thank you to IT for all the work to make it possible. I also just wanted to briefly just take a moment to thank all of you for diving into what is certainly going to be a unique year for all of us. And hopefully you had a chance this summer to get some time away and rest and rejuvenate. Staying in the Bay Area, training that, these are already near impossible jobs, and somehow the universe has found a way to make things even more challenging. But I just thank you for your persistence and your resilience and continuing to keep students first and to care of one another as you do it. So I also had the opportunity to join the new teammate training and share a little bit about my story. I'll keep it much more brief today, but many of you know my why, my reason for doing this work comes back to my dad, who immigrated to this country and grew up on the heels of generations of poverty in his family in India, and he had the opportunity to follow his own passion and his own dream, which centered around physics, because of adults who saw him and saw in him passion and excitement and genuine curiosity that they helped bring out of him, and allowed him to go on to become a physicist, and then as a second career, an educator of physics. And so he continues to be my inspiration. And I came to Aspire after having the opportunity to teach accounting to high school students during some months that I spent in Tanzania. That's the picture you see on the left, and knew that I wanted to spend my career in education, and found my way to Aspire. My early days focused on growth and development and new school openings. And you can see there in that photo, that's Aspire Olean in Huntington Park in LA in the background. Now a flourishing school, but then just a shell of wood. And over on the right there, those are the things that keep me grounded, that bring me joy, that bring me peace. I have a 5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old who right now bring me more joy than peace, but it has certainly been an experience to be at home with our own kids while we do this work, which I know many of you are experiencing deeply as well. As we head into this year, Melissa, if you want to go to the next slide, I'm really, really excited for us to do so in a way that centers on the new values that we developed together as an organization over the course of the last year. So I know many of you sat on the values committee and helped facilitate community conversations. And I'm so proud of where we landed with these, because I feel like there's such a beautiful articulation of what we stand for today, 20 years after our founding, and reflect the journey I think many of us have been on, as well as kind of weave in the sentiments of our equity beliefs and commitments. So I look forward to lifting these up in many spaces and continuing to draw our work back to these, which I think are a real reflection of what our collective why and what we stand for as an organization.
Thank you so much, Mala. And just really quickly, like, why are we even here? And especially for those of you that might be new, or even those of you that have been with Aspire for 17 years, like we got to go back to what it's all about. Remember, keeping students at heart. And so you see a picture of a kindergartner there, and you see a picture of a senior graduating class, and just the stats around the difference in outcomes among students. You can go to the next slide. The same exact kind of data can be seen about academic outcomes for high school completion, college persistence, and college completion. And so we have an imperative here to change those odds and change those outcomes. And quite honestly, we still have some similar disproportionate outcomes in our own system. Next slide. But I want to bring us back. Hear the music. So on that slide, you can see lots of times when we have been together. So if you were ever at the skating rink in the late 80s, early 90s, you might have recognized that song, but do you remember? Great little jam from back in the day. We've been together a lot. I mean, look at all these different events where we have collected. Last time when we were all together, all 800 of us in that center picture, and then the one to the left, the two to the left, were when we were all gathered at Hutchins Square last. And so all 800 of us were in an auditorium. Remember, we had a keynote speaker. We were talking about how equity equals standards, rigorous standard-based instruction for all students. And here we are a year later, all together again. And the mission hasn't changed. It's just the setting. So I just want to make sure we can remember the times when we've all been together. You can go, Melissa. And then I feel like we had 2 years last year, really, if you think about it. There was pre-COVID 2020 and then post-COVID 2020, right? And so as we enter in, we want to look at the highlights from last year. And like I said, Standards Institute, we did relay across all of our schools for leaders. It was a really impactful series of instruction support. And we learned so much about aggressive monitoring and about kind of following through with feedback, the feedback loop. We were authorized to open 2 new schools in South Stockton, and those are launching right now and getting ready to open. We had all teammate PD regionally. That was a really big lift and an exciting time that we just talked about. And then we really dug deep into our new Aspire values and really finalized those, and we're able to roll those out. And we really also, with the support of Melissa, created the CV affinity groups that have continued and will continue today. Post-COVID, we conducted over 1,500 IEPs. Like, that alone blows my mind. So to all our special educators, ed specialists, program specialists, incredible work to serve our kids. Many districts didn't do that. They wrote waivers. They just ignored the law. There was a lot of workarounds that folks did, and we felt like that was not okay. We are going to serve our kids and make sure that we're documenting all of the supports and services that we're going to be providing. And that's going to happen again as we transition into the next phase from distance learning into hybrid learning. Also, we had an 89% participation rate and engagement rate with our distance learning. Now, if you compare that to national averages, I've heard as low as 40 and 50 in some districts. So 89% of students being on technology rush, and not everybody even had a device. It's pretty incredible. We did an org-wide summer school, and Kat really spearheaded that effort across the entire organization, which was fantastic to make sure our kids were getting served and trying to close some gaps in lost learning. And then collaboration structures across schools. Again, Kat helping facilitate a cross-functional group of different grade levels across the entire org to plan. And we're going to continue to grow that because it was so successful. And then lastly, just we held the town halls with our families for the first time, and our school leaders and school teams did an amazing job. I know my wife attended, many of us who are parents attended, and I think it brought so much comfort for our families to know we had a plan, to hear directly from their site teams and leaders what that plan was. I think it brought a lot of security and comfort to our teammates. So thank you for being willing to do that, because I know it was hard and I know it was a big lift.
Thanks, Tony, for lifting up some celebrations from last year and continuing to do this work with such intention as we do it in a different way this year. As we head into talking a little bit about our work this year and talking about our big rocks, I want to anchor us in this quote from Collectively that comes from Zaretta Hammond and Dr. Bettina Love. I've been sharing in various spaces, and I know Melissa mentioned in the beginning just her work that she will engage in as we do across the organization this year in some deeper ways around culturally responsive practices and pedagogy. And I think the purpose of this quote speaks to me because it really reminds us that our why is anchored in bringing out the curiosity and the spirits of the young people that we serve. And as Tony said, that means starting with our own mindsets and how we see our students and how they experience how they are seen and loved in all of our schools in every region, and how we show up as educators for the purpose of doing that. And we sit in a system where constantly we are talking about test scores and we are talking about outcomes, and that is one of our inherent tensions that we have to navigate. But it's not our why. And I think it's really important for us to continually anchor in that, and especially this year to amplify that as we really seek to connect our equity commitments and beliefs to our actions with intention. In particular, we are in a moment that many now are referring to as a double pandemic of health and of racism. And I think the idea that many of us have been talking about and internalizing about what it really means to do this work in this moment calls on us to see this as an opportunity to rethink our work, to think about the system in which we operate and how we replicate systems of oppression within our own organization. And I really appreciate this quote from Sonia Renee Taylor, who's an author and a poet. It's a little long, so I'll read it since we're on streaming. It's a little bit hard to read while folks are talking. She says, our pre-corona existence was not normal other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long return, my friend. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all humanity and nature. And I really have been coming back to this quote because I see it both as a reminder to seize this moment as an opportunity for us to think differently about our work, but also about our responsibility to continue to do that, even if the national conversation dampens around really revealing the disproportionality of both the health pandemic and the racism pandemic in our country. And so as we do that, we also recognize that our work does not exist in isolation. There are national policies and national policy makers sending messages every day to our students, to our families, to our teammates around who belongs and who doesn't, around who matters and who doesn't. And part of our work is to make sure that our own policies inside our organization counteract some of the harmful and traumatic effects of some of these national policies. And that's hard work. It requires work inside the classroom, outside the classroom. It touches academics, it touches social emotional learning, and it touches our own policies and practices across our organization. And so really intentionally examining those to understand how we are either perpetuating or serving as an anti-racist organization. And Melissa, if you could go to the next slide. I also want to highlight that we are sitting in a moment where the political climate in California and the impact that that has on us as a charter school has never been quite as intense as it is now. Many of you are familiar with some of the new laws that have passed this year, including AB 1505. And I think Tony can speak to this with a lot of experience now, having just put the law into effect July 1st, but just how starkly it shifts the power dynamics of our work and really brings an ambiguity into renewals and material revisions that we've just never experienced as a sector. And so another part of our work this year is to really navigate what it means to be an advocacy organization, to take an organizing stance. That's work we haven't really had to do over the last 20 years, so it will take some learning on our part. But as the largest CMO in California and one of the only that operates across regions in California, I think we really have an opportunity to do that learning and to understand how we advocate on behalf of all students across the state. So that's also work that we'll be taking on this year and are already doing in various counties, including in Sacramento and Stockton, as many of you have been involved in. I also find myself coming back often, and Tony and I talk about this graphic a lot, so I wanted to take a minute to just put it in front of us because I think it offers a really helpful framework as we think about where we're sitting right now and how we want to head into this year. So I'll just walk you through it since it's a little small on the YouTube screen, but the idea is that the pandemic and crises create a space where we find ourselves in 3 different phases of work: responding, recovering, and reinventing. And so we start in response mode, right? When the pandemic hit last year, we had to really move quickly to think about how do we shift to distance learning? How do we get devices and stable internet to all of our families? How do we make sure we continue to provide meal services to our families? We were in a very reactive and responsive mode because that's what the moment called for. Right now, we find ourselves more in that middle bucket of recovery. So with intention, trying to think about what does a new year look like? What does it mean to welcome students back to school in a very different environment? How do we be intentional about supporting academic acceleration as well as social and emotional needs and trauma-informed practice? How do we reacclimate all of us back into this new environment? And as we look ahead to a commitment that we will not return back to normal and that our goal is not to get back to the status quo, what this calls on us to do is, even as we sit in the deep and detailed planning of recovery, that we are keeping a lens on what it means to reinvent our practices, that we are questioning the work in the ways we've always done it, and that we're keeping one lens on the opportunity to really rethink our work. And what I appreciate most about this is that it honors that right now we're in a space where there's a lot of work in front of us. There's a lot of new requirements and policies and equipment and logistics that we're navigating. So we don't need to dramatically shift everything in this moment, but we do have to keep an eye on how we see an opportunity to do things differently so that we can create that space with intention to really do that work when we start to exit this recovery mode. And so I think it's a really important reminder for us to hold this and hold one lens on reinvention, because as the bottom graph shows, it's just too easy to revert back to the way that we've always done things if we don't have an eye on this right now. So as we think about our big rocks, we certainly want to be thinking about these lenses.
Thanks, Mala. And I actually want to connect that idea to a really powerful article that many of us read over summer, written by Hugh Vasquez from the National Equity Project. And he proposed this idea of what if we don't return to school as usual? And we really took that idea into the next 2 days of professional development. So on the next slide, we really want to talk through how our 2 days are framed around this idea of how can we reinvent the school experience for all of our students. And you know that across the state, there's so many school districts who are jumping into right now, how do you use Google Classroom and Zoom and all of these technical pieces. And over the next 2 days, we have a little bit of time tomorrow where we will really dive into distance learning best practices. But the bulk of our time spent together collectively is really framing around how we center our school around our students who have in the past been most marginalized and underserved. And so on the next slide, we asked ourselves some questions, and we really wanted to share with you how we designed the time. So you might be wondering, why are we spending time on affinity groups right now? And Melissa will tell you more about affinity groups in a moment. However, it's really important to underscore that we're all really impacted and traumatized when we consistently see Black people being murdered and mistreated on a regular basis in our communities. And we're all valued and aspire, and we all need to show up as leaders for equity. So it's important that we have time to really process and think, what does this work mean for us in our own identities? You might also be wondering, why are we talking about social justice standards now? Isn't Common Core standards, isn't that our focus? Absolutely, Common Core is something that we are going to continue to work towards. And we need to balance that and have curriculum that addresses both our academic standards for our students, as well as our social emotional curriculum items. And the social justice standards are a framework from teaching tolerance that bring in the aspects of identity, diversity, justice, and action that our students need and deserve. We can't just teach reading, writing, math, and science. We need to ensure our students have access to those pieces, but also are critical thinkers and really develop the whole child. You might also notice that the afternoons, we are spending a lot of time on multi-language learners. So you might be wondering, why are we talking about multi-language learners so much when we're in distance learning right now? And just want to name that we chose this picture right here because many of our students and families who speak multiple languages are often treated as less than in the media. Sometimes they're treated less than in our political discourse, in our practices, and our policies. However, we know as an organization that our multi-language learners come from diverse backgrounds and have rich, varied, and beautiful experiences. And they deserve learning environments that honor their assets while also build their language development so that they can thrive and be their best selves. So you'll notice that today and tomorrow, we have a significant amount of time devoted to learning about English language development, including instruction around designated ELD from our curriculum partners with EL Achieve, as well as English 3D. And we also have some sessions designed around integrated language supports for all of our students. And then finally, you might be asking, why are we talking about trauma-informed instruction and why SEL? And this graph right here shows the recent spike in unemployment. And I think we've all been impacted by the pandemic. Many of our students and families have felt this acutely, and we know that unemployment is often tied to healthcare, food stability or instability, housing, domestic violence, substance abuse, and so many measures of safety. So all of us as parents and educators know that students thrive on consistency and stability, and this moment in time has been anything but those things for our students. And it's disproportionately impacted our communities of color. So we must change the way in which we partner with our families and our students in a way that is trauma-informed and provide resources that we can use to provide love and compassion while not lowering our expectations. And I think about that restorative practice window of having the high expectations, but also having that high support. And so we're making sure to prioritize some time over the next 2 days to really think about what does trauma-informed practices mean for our region. And want to name that we're going to continue to serve our students with special needs. We really started last year org-wide with this focus, and we need to pivot and provide some more intense trainings and changes to our special education delivery model. And you'll notice that our special education team is going to be spending a significant amount of time in the training over the next 2 days together. And even over the next 6 weeks, they will be pulled off more regularly than they would in a different year. And this is really important as we stay current with shifting practices and policies, but also do it in a way that feels right with our vision, our mission, and right for our students and team. And so again, all of these visuals are designed to show that the context of the next 2 days are pulled so that we can center our most marginalized and under-resourced students and families. If we start from centering our work around supporting our teammates to focus on our multiple language learners, our students with special needs, our Black students, our students in unstable home environments, then if we do that in concert with our Aspire values of joy, belonging, community, advocacy, well-being, we'll create those schools that we know. And to Mala's point a moment ago, we will reinvent Aspire in a way that feels right for our team and our community. And so on the next slide, just want to actually bring it even more specifically down to the classroom level. And I wanted to connect these ideas on what it means for classrooms and students. And this is an image of some fifth graders who are doing their end of year promotion exhibit that's centered around social justice. And this is what we want. We want our students to be taking this on and living this and breathing this in our work and really prioritize in our curriculum the things that matter most. And there's a lot already in place at Aspire in terms of our equity development and our work. And I am so honored and proud of the work that we've started. And I know that as we continue to make choices around equity and social justice, we'll continue to improve these practices for our students. And to that point, I wanted to connect it deeply on the next slide to our equity belief commitments that we all hold. And I want to call all of us in to upholding these commitments. And no matter what role you serve, no matter what school you teach at, what region, what city, what Zoom background you use when you're on these meetings, I just want to name that we're all going to play a part in upholding these equity belief commitments this year. And on the next slide, just want to share that we have been on a journey. We are not starting from zero. We've started so much work, and we are going to continue to prepare our students to navigate a system that was not built for them. But we must work to be an anti-racist organization and really support anti-racist policy through our actions and ideas so that it really changes the fabric of our organization. And want to say that we see you. We're working at a sprint pace right now, but we're also in it for the marathon long haul as we really work to shape Aspire. And it is done by all of you. So thank you for being with us today. And then pass it back to Tony.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kat. And I think as we're talking about equity as a journey, I'd like to bring this image back. I still have a framed version of the one to the left that I think was from about 7 years ago when we first started working with National Equity Project, and we started Leading for Equity and going out there and starting to dive in with a partnership with them. And I just like looking at these two images side by side to see the stark difference in the way that, you know, artistically has portrayed equity. And it talks about a journey from equity to liberation, and that the wall in the last one is torn down. And yet I still find this image problematic for many, many different reasons. One, they're still those young people are still out in the outfield, can barely see the game. Why aren't they in the stands? Why don't they have tickets? Just lots of things that we could also talk about. That this journey, I like Jeremy's statement in the chat. I thought I knew so much until I read this book, and now I realize I have got a whole lot more to learn. And I think that has to be all of our growth mindsets when it comes to this work. There is no checkbox of wokeness that you're done, that you figured it all out. And I think as we walk into this work as humble learners and we dive into our initiatives, I think we're going to realize we missed some things too. And so I think as we go, we'll find out the ways in which we're going to continue to grow. So next slide. So yeah, what are we going to do this year? So we're calling these big rocks, and we're calling them big rocks because of the things we want to carry, right? If you think about, there's that analogy of if you're trying to fill a jar with rocks, if you put all the little ones in first and then you try to cram the big ones in at the end, they're not going to fit. But if you kind of drop your big ones in first and then put the little pebbles and the smaller ones in around it, it will all fit. So what we wanted to do this year as both an organization and then at your school sites is plan around these three big rocks of academic acceleration, reopening, and resilience. And so we'll walk through where specifically some of our equity initiatives align with those, but please know that these are the foundations, these are the rocks for which your school site action plans will be built as well. And I know that you've been diving into those with your team lately. So next slide. So you can see under each one of our priorities, there are several initiatives that align with our equity imperatives for this year. And so you can just take a second to look at those. But we talked about some, including multi-language learners, special education, and pro-Black programming. Next slide. Priority 2 under the value of agency and self-determination. And I appreciate the way these slides also align the values with the priorities and with the initiatives, which I really appreciate. So culturally affirming practices, kind of examining the way in which our system either creates disproportionality or places where it exists. And then we're going to have a strong policy against any hate speech in schools. Next slide, please. And then lastly, doing a deep dive into how to be an anti-racist. So again, we're learning that equity isn't enough to just actively try to seek giving folks what they need, and not being both advocates but also disruptors is an important part of this journey and our imperative for our students as well. Next slide.
Thanks, Tony. And as we think about how we structure our learning over the course of the year, part of that work will be to leverage this framework around how we know professional development, learning, sense-making translates into transformational work. So we want to be intentional about creating spaces to do this work alone, in affinity, and across difference. So as you see kind of the breakdown of Big Rock 3 and how we think about building resilience in ourselves as leaders, in our students, and in our communities, you'll see some real intentionality about leveraging this framework. And so one of the things that we're doing differently this year that we're going to try is what we're calling our Equity Learning to Action series. Some really consistent themes that I heard over the course of last year when it came to how we're living our equity commitments and living our stance that Black Lives Matter is both that we need to have some real consistent and required professional development of all of our teammates, all of our educators, all of our leaders, as well as some really clear and intentional connections to action and how those beliefs show up in our classrooms and in our policies and in our practices. So part of our work this year will to take all of our professional development, our equity learning, and to create some spaces to make sense of that. And for every school and every department and every team, including the leadership team, to create a learning to action plan that highlights how those learnings around equity will translate into actual action that we take in the organization. The theme that we would like to center this year also come from the feedback I heard over the course of the last year, and those will be implicit bias and microaggressions specifically focused on racial aggressions. We've heard this from adults, we've heard this from students, that these are prevalent in our classroom spaces and in our team spaces, and we want to be really intentional about disrupting those practices and ensuring we're all interrogating our own biases so that, as we said in the beginning, we're creating a space where we are seeing and honoring and loving all students to create learning environments.
All right. So as we think about continuing with what Mala shared with us, we have a collective study for Aspire leaders, and you saw it as Tony was going over our Resilience Big Rock. So over the course of the year, we have a book study to action scope and sequence that we're going to be diving into on how to be an anti-racist. And we were really intentional about why we want to name it Book Study to Action, because we don't want this to just be another book study that we chat about. That's one component of it. But we really want to take our learnings that we have from the book study and turn it into action. So that will be a piece of what all of the leaders in our organization are also going to be diving into. And with that, Mala mentioned this earlier, but as you looked at our agenda for today, you may have noticed that compared to last year, it was slightly different in the way that you'll notice that we had affinity groups and there was only 3 offerings for equity spaces that we were doing. And really the reasoning behind that is because we really want to center our affinity groups and offer some additional spaces as well. And we know that in affinity groups, it allows a space for teammates to convene for intentional discussions to talk about power, privilege, and oppression together while they're in affinity together. And then also think through how we're going to dismantle our oppressive practices that we currently have. And we need to do this together in affinity. And as we do this, we know that this is also going to be a space for healing to help you as our teammates to be able to sustain this work that we're doing, because we know that it's extremely enormous and emotional, and we want you in it for the long haul. So as we prepare to head into our next section, we have our student panel. I see their beautiful faces popping up now. I want to close out with this. It was not enough to come and listen to a great sermon or a message every Sunday morning and be confined to those 4 walls and those 4 corners. You had to get out and do something. John Lewis. So throughout like the course of Mala speaking, Tony speaking, Kat speaking, and then as we listen to our student panel, we really want to think through our action and our calling and what we're going to get out to do and how we're going to reinvent Aspire Public Schools to ensure that we are a place where all students are learning and we have anti-racist practices in place in service of all of our scholars. So we are going to do a shift over into our next section. And as we do, what I would love for you to do is in the Padlet that I know that you have up, and I'm sure Kat will get reposted for you, is I want you to think about everything that we talked about in this beginning portion. What's one thing that's resonating with you? And this is an opportunity that you're going to be able to engage with the panel as well. And I'll give you a sneak peek. We can't get to all of the questions, but we will get to a few of the questions that we will also ask the panel for you as well. So we are so proud and honored and privileged to have you a part of our journey. So why don't you go ahead and take 30 seconds and add it into the Padlet, and then we will get started with our panel in about 30 seconds. All righty. So please continue to add to the Padlet as we move on. And a piece of what we wanted to do today is we wanted to center and keep our students at heart. So we have an opportunity and a privilege that we get to listen to a few of our scholars. So once again, in the Padlet, there were a couple of different things. There was, do you have a question for the panel? What words, phrases, or sentences speak to you from the panel? And then afterwards, we'll have an opportunity for a brief reflection and what this means for your own leadership and your own journey of what we've learned from our panel. All righty. So in a second, I'm actually going to stop sharing screen because I actually want you to be able to see all of these beautiful faces that are in front of me right now. But we have 7 panelists that are here with us today. You're going to notice that every single panelist, as we think through just the state of our nation, what we've talked about earlier, is our entire panel is a Black student panel. And we get to learn and hear about their experiences with Aspire and what we can do to be a better place for our students. And before I take off my sharing screen, I do want to give a big shout out to all of the CV high schools. We contacted a lot of the high schools to be able to get a panel for today, and it was a really short time frame. And on the screen, you're going to see a couple of names that pop up that were really instrumental in supporting with that. And though we only have 2 schools represented, it's really just around the scheduling that we weren't able to get other panelists that were a part of this. And we know that we're carrying them in our heart today as we go into our conversation with them. So we're really excited about that. And if you're like me, I could sit and talk to any of these panelists probably for like 3 days and just kind of pick their brain about what we can do as an organization and really like expand my learning and my growth. And we only have about 30 minutes with our panel. So you'll notice that we do have some questions that we asked to them. And we also offered them to be able to give insight on which ones they really wanted to speak to. So for some of the questions, we're going to hear from a few of the panelists, and then some of the questions we'll hear from all of them. And then at the end, when we do the Q&A, we'll open it up to who wants to share. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so you can see these fabulous faces that I have in front of me. And I'm just beyond thrilled that I have them with us. So welcome, panelists. Thank you so much for being with us today. So we're going to start off with our first portion, and I want you to think about who you are for a moment. Think about all of the identities that make you the beautiful person you are. Think about your race, your ethnicity, your nationality, your religion, your gender expression, sexual orientation, just to name a few. And I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. So when you're ready, Mitchell, feel free to go ahead and unmute, and you have about a minute per panelist to share.
All right, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is safe and healthy, especially with all this COVID going around now. My name is Mitchell Alexander. I'm currently 19 years old. I'm from Stockton, California, and I've been with Aspire from K through 12, starting off with Vincent Shelby Academy, and then eventually moving on to Benjamin Holt College Prep and graduating in 2019. So I'm going to be attending San Diego State my second year in the fall, and my major is kinesiology with emphasis in pre-physical therapy and a minor in interdisciplinary studies from the Honors College. My goal once I graduate is to get my master's and become a physician assistant. And I look forward to meeting some of you guys, some of you educators, and thank you. Yeah.
Nicholas A.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Arosamena. So I started my Aspire journey in 4th grade when I transferred to Port City Academy. And from there, I went to Langston Hughes and I graduated in 2018. I am going into my 3rd year of college at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. And in terms of my identities, I am a Black man, which means that I am slated to have to do a lot of work for protecting myself, but also protecting others and doing my best to educate myself. Because that's being a Black man means I simultaneously can be oppressed, but also can act as oppressor. And that's something that I do my best to work on every day. And that's very important to my identity.
Thank you. Jordan?
Good morning, everyone. My name's Jordan. Thank you for having us here today for the alumni panel. I graduated from Ben Holt in 2013. I went on to do my undergrad at UC Berkeley, where I majored in media studies and minored in journalism. I just finished my master's at USC Annenberg, where I graduated with my degree in strategic public relations. And with regards to my identity, right now I consider myself a storyteller. And I like to center narratives around diversity and inclusion. And I think that that's important, especially for me as I identify as someone who is Black and queer. And I think the intersectional perspective is really important to highlight in all of our identities. If you aren't familiar with Kimberly Crenshaw's term, intersectionality, it's really powerful. And that's how I look at my own identity. It intersects with a lot of different things. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Erica?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Erica Moore. I have been with Aspire since kindergarten, and I graduated from Aspire Benjamin Holt College Prep in 2018. I currently am a rising junior at the University of Southern California. I'm studying accounting. And as far as my identities, I identify as a Black woman, use she, her pronouns. And yeah, I also identify as a Christian, if that's something also important to mention. So yeah, those are just a few of my little identities.
Thank you so much. Jocelyn.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jaslyn Robinson Moore. I've been with Aspire since kindergarten, starting at Aspire Rosebrooks Academy, then graduating class of 2020 at Aspire Life Savings Academy. And I will be starting in the fall of 2020 at Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, Georgia. And I identify as a Black woman.
Thank you, Jocelyn, and sorry about your name. And then Nicholas V.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nicholas Vigil. I'm a rising sophomore biology major from Stockton, California, and I attend Morehouse College. I've been a part of Aspire since 5th grade and graduated from Langston Hughes Academy in class of 2019. I identify as a Black Mexican-American Christian, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Nicholas. All righty, well, let's dive in. So I want you to think about your Aspire experience. Think about the people, the programs, and the places. In what ways did you feel safe, seen, heard, and valued? And we're going to get started with Jordan.
I think this is a really good question. Just going back to my experiences back in high school, and I started Aspire in 8th grade. So that's where my journey began with the Aspire system. And I've always had, supportive educators there that helped me with my learning, helped me to grow and to evolve as a scholar. They really pushed that college for certain mantra. And I think that helped me to believe that anything was within my reach. And so that's how I felt supported, just knowing that I could apply my mind and do whatever was possible in learning the material and being the scholar that I still consider myself to be. So I felt heard in the sense that I could come in and ask questions. I didn't feel at all like I was being belittled or any of the sense like that. I think I had that comfort in reaching out to the educators and just being open to receiving whatever help that I could get. And I felt like that made me feel valued as a student. And I just didn't feel like I could be uncomfortable in having these conversations and going for help and things like that. I've always been supported through the educators that I had at my time at Ben Holt.
Thanks, Jordan. Nicholas V.
Places that I really felt comfortable and felt safe at school. There's a few places actually. Of course, there's always those teachers' classrooms that you feel safe and comfortable in, but also like after school program I felt comfortable in, and being involved with sports and different things like that. And a few of like my teachers coming up to me, asking me questions to see if I'm okay and different things like that. Those are places that I really felt safe. And I recommend having all Aspire schools like to really invest in their after school programs, because I feel like a lot of times that's where like a lot of students who you don't really hear speak a lot during school or get their voice or opinion out is where they speak up at most of the time. So really in general, those are the few places I felt safe in, and those were my comfort spots that I really just loved.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicholas. And Erica.
Hi, so to piggyback kind of off Jordan, I also agree with everything that he said. I feel like with the Aspire schools that I attended, our administration was very supportive. And if we ever had a problem, we were able to come to them and express our interests. And our teachers were very open and willing to listen and sit down with us if we ever did have an issue that would occur. I think they really just did a good job creating an environment where I personally felt welcome. And I just wasn't afraid of that. So I think that's where I really felt seen, heard, and valued.
Thanks, Erica. And thanks everyone for sharing. So Now we really want to do the opposite end. And we want to think through in ways that you did not feel safe, seen, heard, and valued. And Nicholas V is going to get us started first.
Really with that, in general, there's of course those were the places where I felt safe, comfortable. Of course, there's teachers that I had that I felt safe and comfortable around, but there's also administration staff and students as well. Also, students are not left out in this that I did not feel comfortable with and I did not feel safe and a part of. There's some times where like conversations of the African American community were brought up and questions that I could not really answer or didn't feel safe to answer, or I really felt like I wasn't able to speak my mind and my truth because I feel like some of the questions that were put upon me were kind of forced in a way. And sometimes I also felt as if some areas within the school weren't really, what's the word am I trying to say here? I feel like sometimes in the areas of some of the schools weren't really meant for me, really. Like, of course, me being also Mexican American, like people would think, okay, that's predominantly the amount of people who go to your school are Mexican, but at the same time, like I'm also Black. So when I like in some of those spaces, I didn't feel comfortable with other students like saying certain words and doing certain things, and sometimes teachers not really like stepping up or doing anything and different things like that.
Thank you. Nicholas A.
Hi. So yeah, I think Aspire did a I think my Aspire school, my Aspire experience was really, really good. Especially when I hear some of my fellow alumni or friends like talk about their experiences with Aspire. I do feel like my experience was very beneficial to me, and it was instrumental in getting me to where I am. But kind of piggybacking off of what Nicholas Vigil was saying, in that like everybody might have opinions about something and everybody might have things that they feel or think they know. And sometimes you might not always be able to express that to the best of your own ability, but when those opinions now have to do with your, like, essentially your humanity, right? Like whether or not you're worthy of being considered another person, like when you're talking about issues that affect the Black community, then it becomes like harder, right? Like if I am trying to express this idea that like, you know, maybe that like you might see all these stereotypes on TV, but not all Black people are like that. And you don't really know how to do that, how to explain that to somebody else when they're able to throw like all of these statistics at you, where it's like you hear them and those might be true, but you also recognize, like, even if you don't have the words for it to express like how that's not the entire story, then like, you know, that becomes scary, right? Because it's like someone is using facts in order to dehumanize you and you don't really know how to defend against that. And then like, you know, so another part of what I wish my education had encompassed was more conversations about that, where I could learn to express the things that I was feeling. Because when somebody else's feelings were expressed to me in that way, like that didn't make me feel safe, seen, heard, or comfortable, to the point which, like, you know, I didn't enjoy talking about, like, you know, issues like that, because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to say the right thing and that it would be my fault that somebody else had these opinions about, like, you know, Black or brown people. And then I was going to say something else, but now I can't remember it.
Well, if you remember it, let me know. And I'm going to pause this for 5 seconds, and I want you to think about the words that we just heard. And as we go into the, oh, you got it. Okay, go ahead, Nicholas.
I do. Okay, then something else in a completely different vein. So in my experience, my school is, I think, still relatively new. I know we have some Aspire schools that are newer than ours now, but especially when I was growing up in, like, you know, high school, Like, the school was new, so there was a lot of things that hadn't been done yet. And the administration was really supportive of us doing those things, but none of us had been to another high school. Like, none of us had seen how these things work. Like, you're a high school student, you don't really know necessarily how like budget plans or like mission plans like really work. And sometimes it's really hard to even know what questions to ask. And then I think especially for new schools, older schools that have a system, like, it might not necessarily be as important. But especially with new schools, I think that the administration would be able to see more things happen, and the entire school would be better served by the administration taking an active role to educate, like, student and student leadership on the processes for these things, like, in a very, very tangible way, right? Because because things that I don't think normally should have taken us as long, like something as simple as planning, like, a school dance, would take us, like, months and months of like pre-work. Like, dances that we would start planning at the beginning of the year in fall would happen, like, in the middle of the year in spring, because it just took us, like, a lot of time, and things had to get pushed back. And I think that would have been better served by having, like, just better education and support when we're starting things out and we're learning things.
Thank you for that, Nicholas. You make me think about our two new schools that are opening and how we're leaning in to support them as well. Thank you for sharing. So we're in a really critical moment in education where we have the opportunity to redesign our space to ensure that everyone is safe and everyone is seen for who they truly are. So as you think about just your education with us, what should Aspire educators keep doing? So Jordan, I would love to get started with you first.
I think that Aspire educators should keep centering their students, especially diverse students in the classroom. They should keep being attentive to them and not ignore, students of color. I think that kind of creates a sense of othering, and it takes away from belonging. And I think that's really important in a classroom space, especially if it's maybe a predominantly white student space or whatever it may be. I think that educators should continue to just take notice to every student in the classroom and be mindful of what you're saying, how you're saying it, who's in the room, things of that nature. And I think the educators that I've had have been really good about doing that. And I think that's something that they should keep doing as we go into this next school year and beyond.
Thank you, Jordan. Erica?
Hi, I would say, just like Jordan, just keep providing that environment for students where we feel welcome and encouraged. I think that the Aspire schools that I attended, our administration really did a good job of, if I was coming into class and I felt down or something like looked off, I would always ask, Erica, how are you doing? Is there anything going on? Do you need help with anything? What can we do to make you feel better? And I know that made me really feel appreciated, and it really helped. If it was in the morning, it would really help boost my day and help boost my productivity and things like that. So I really appreciated that, and I wish that is something that they would continue to do in the years to come.
Thank you. Jocelyn, can I get your voice on this one also?
I would say, just like the other panelists, just keep addressing that there is a problem. Keep living up to the commitments that you've already made to as Aspire whole, really.
Thank you. And the next one is, what should we stop doing? We're going to go right back to Jocelyn.
So when I think about my experience with Aspire, I would say most recently when I've made observations and stuff. I would say that some educators need to stop being so passive aggressive, because I've heard teachers make statements like, oh, well, I don't see color, or everyone's the same. And that's, you know, I think in certain situations that's a good thing, because things don't always need to be called out in a space where you're here to learn and grow. But that's also very damaging to students, because there are students that I know who come from different backgrounds, and you know, that needs to be addressed, because not everyone's the same, you know, about the whole equality, equity thing. Everyone has different needs that need to be met. And whether that's, well, this person needs more attention than the other, or this one, you know, is going through something. Everyone has different things that needs to be met. And so when you say that all kids are the same, that's kind of like a cop out of what you're doing with Aspire. So if you're supposed to if you're here to serve communities and students of who are particularly minorities, that's your job. Do that. Their kids need a place to feel where they feel welcome. Like I can't remember who said it, but kids need that. Well, if I feel a certain way about one thing, then I know that I can go to this teacher who doesn't look like me, but I feel like they understand kind of what they've said to me or what they've said in class. So that's one thing, just the passive aggressiveness, because that I know it kind of made me uncomfortable, but I feel like also your school experience is what you make it. But for younger kids, especially, I know at Lexington Hughes, it's 6 through 12. So it's, you know, when you're young and you're starting out, you don't know. And you're hit with all these things. I know for me, especially, that you're hit with all these different things, you know, realizing that I am different from others, but my teacher says that I'm all the same. Well, they don't have the struggles that I go through. And I don't have the struggles that they go through. So we'll never know, but we're the same. But, you know, it's, how can I say this? I can't remember what I completely blanked out of that, but everyone has a need that needs to be met. And if you say that, well, oh, they're all the same, then that's kind of basically undervaluing. I don't want to say it, like you're not valuing that kid's experience, because because school is not their only experience in life. And I think that's all I need to say about that.
Thank you. And I wish I could get to more of you, but I'm going to move to the next question, and then I'm getting a few questions that are coming my way also from our teammates. So we're going to go to the next question. And what should we all start doing? And let's start with Jordan first.
I just, first of all, I want to emphasize what Jocelyn said, because I think she made some really good points. Not all students' experiences are the same, and you can kind of parallel that to people who think that all lives matter in the Black Lives Matter movement, because not everyone's experience is the same. And that definitely goes for people in education who are people of color, who are Black. Not everyone's experience is the same. And I think what educators should start doing is not treating race like it's an elephant in the room. I heard earlier in the presentation before the panel started that you were reading books about anti-racism and reading books by Black authors. And I think you should incorporate that in the education as well for students. Introduce some of these voices that are new. Don't be afraid to change the curriculum up, because I feel like in the times that we're in, it's important to really center more diverse voices so that people have that exposure. It shouldn't take going off to college to learn about things that you should have learned about in high school. And I think that's where you can really lay the groundwork early on so that students have the knowledge that they need, they're aware, they're not ignorant to what's going on in the world, and they have that necessary exposure.
Thanks, Jordan. Mitchell, we haven't heard from you in a little bit. Give us some insight.
I 100% agree with Jordan on a lot of those points, and a lot of those points were also mine. I would just like to add on to maybe incorporate more minority history in our education. So I feel like it's oftentimes neglected and or glossed over due to maybe like the curriculum, like Jordan was saying. And this allows for our history to be taught through a more narrow lens that may suppress or hide minority excellence. And it also leads to us, or minority students, or not minority students, but it also leads to that narrative that like minority history is maybe not as significant as other history, which is just simply not the case. But if it was taught through a more like wide lens, I feel like this would show and motivate minority students to show that they could go and do anything that they want to do or succeed, you know, and maybe go into fields that they may be underrepresented, such as like the STEM fields. And a simplest like solution to this may be just simply teaching American history through like multiple perspectives. And like Jordan was saying, not just, it shouldn't take college to like get to that point. It should be taught more early on. So yeah.
Thank you. Jocelyn?
I think I agree also with what Mitchell was saying about how, you know, the minority history needs to be taught more in schools, because it's not just about, I know for Black students, it's not just about, we didn't start at slavery. And so, you know, for me personally, I had to learn about my own culture through teachers and through myself. So it wasn't, if I could have got that at school, it would have made me feel like, you know, more comfortable with asking questions to teachers, because, you know, your teachers, they're educators, they have their degrees, so they should know. So, but when that's not taught, it makes you feel like they don't know. And so you have to do it for yourself. And that's kind of hard because you don't know where to start except for what you've been taught. And that's slavery, civil rights, segregation. And there's more to everybody's history and culture than just the bad things or what's most known.
Thank you. Erica?
I completely agree with everything that my peers said before me, especially with teaching more about minority history in schools. I personally didn't get a lot of that in my Aspire education career. And even though I'm in college, I still haven't gotten any of that yet. So it's like everything that I really know right now and that I'm learning, I'm being taught to myself. I'm like talking about that with my other peers and things. Another thing I would like to mention is working on retaining Black students in Aspire schools. There are a lot of students that attend Aspire schools from K through 5, but as you know, they get into middle school and high school, they begin to drift away and go to these other bigger public high schools. And I feel like Aspire and like the administration could do more to show those students and the parents that we value them here and we would like them to continue their education there and hopefully finish out all the way through 12th grade with Aspire. And lastly, one important thing is like keeping in mind things that are going on in the nation right now and think about how those things will affect your students. I know I have a little brother who just graduated in the class of 2020, and I was trying to talk to him about some of the things going on. And he was like, Erica, I can't really talk about that right now. Like I have something to study for it. And I was just like, wow, you know, that's something that would be very important to keep in mind, that I wish his teachers would have been able to keep in mind, like how is that affecting our different minority students, or how is what's going on right now affecting our Black students? How do they feel? Are they still able to perform the work that they're usually doing with what's going on? Like, is that a distraction for them? So that's what I have to contribute.
Thank you. Wow. So those are all the questions that we gave you to prepare for, and we've gotten quite a few questions from our Aspire teammates, and they're all so good. So we only have time actually for one question, and really wanted to center around a question that actually is around distance learning, which we're starting school on Monday in distance learning. So the question is, how can teachers help you feel more seen and heard, especially in distance learning? So I would say, please go ahead and we can maybe do two or three of you to go ahead and share out. So unmute yourself if you want to respond to this question.
I think the distance learning module, like, you know, very obviously provides some challenges. Like new challenges that teachers haven't encountered before. And honestly, the best thing, in my opinion, at least, like, you know, my humble opinion, would be focusing even more heavily than Aspire already does on the community building aspect of Aspire schools. Like, there's not really much you can do about the fact that we're all in different places now and we're not able to physically see or interact with each other. But this is going to take a lot of work on the Aspire staff's part, but also a lot of work on like, you know, a student's willingness to buy into the community that Aspire is going to want to build. However, like, you know, this is like, you know, like it has to start with Aspire making students see the value in building that community, right? And this can come in lots of different ways. And one of the ways that I am the most partial towards is focusing on the things that we talked before, which is that like, you know, ethnic studies, right? Like, there are organizations in Stockton who are at this very moment trying to convince the California state system to allow ethnic studies to satisfy the social studies requirement in California high schools, right? And then, so I think that that's something that Aspire should be very interested in, right? And so teaching and Aspire finding a way to get more ethnic studies in the actual school day would be incredibly important, but also incredibly motivating for students, right? Like, you know, I still have times when I'm not 100% certain why, like, you know, I'm really going to college and why I'm really going through all of this, right? Like, I know that, like, you know, I'm pretty good at it, and I was told that I really should do it and that I really needed to do it. But it's that education, right? It's being able to look to other people and kind of look into my own past and my own history, and then like see, like, you know, and connect there, that really motivates me and like pushes me forward and like kind of gives me that basis for like why I actually am deciding to do this. And it kind of turns that decision that was kind of pushed to me using, like, you know, the Aspire mantra and the Aspire mission, and it kind of turns it into a decision that I'm actively making, like, you know, every single day.
Thank you. Or one or two of you, probably one of you, would you like to share on this one?
Really, I feel like how we teachers can help us feel more seen and heard is having like sessions with Black students, like how we used to have in school with BSU and different things like that. Because that was another safe space that we had within our school, and just learn more of our history in general. Because there are different things like I used to not know, like that. There are books that I now read that I used to not read, like how they came before Columbus, how to be an anti-racist, different things like that. And just making sure to check on students' mental health and different things like that, because that's very important. Because I feel as if during this time, people start losing themselves and they don't know what to do because they don't really have nothing to do but just be on a laptop or a phone and just be at home all the time, and just check up on us, and not to avoid things going on in the world, really, and to really check up on us. Because like in school, I feel like when people like Sandra Bland or somebody have died like during the school time, like we'll come to school the next day, teachers will know about it and different people will know about it, but it's like conversations will not come up. But it's kind of the way you have to be careful when you approach these different things, because you don't want to approach it and be kind of like press forward. You think you can press forward it, but it depends on which student you do it with, because you can't really just pull students to the side and be like, hey, how are you and how are you feeling? Because not every student's going to open up to you. So it's really how you present these conversations, different things like that. And I hope that that all the staff members, administration, everybody reading Dr. Kennedy's book and different things like that really take into consideration, and not just having this panel just for students to speak and not incorporating anything. Because I don't want teachers to stop having conversations that they already have with students to like have conversations with us Black students. Yes, continue having those conversations, but don't exclude us from any of the conversations. Include us in the conversations, and let's actually grow together, because we as Black students, we don't want to be superior to our other students. We want to be equal, of course. And what does that show? During this time, it's going to be much harder, I believe, with distant learning, but I feel like we'll get through it.
Wow, thank you so much for your time today. And I know that I already am just like thinking through everything that you shared and like, what am I going to take from it in my role, and how are we going to put things into action so we can really change? And I bet like all of our teammates listening right now, they're feeling the same way. So I just want to thank you so much for your time today on YouTube. Like, let's blow up the chat and give some huge gratitude to our panel that we have here for taking their time. And check your email later today for just a small token of our appreciation for you spending your time with us today. But thank you so much for joining us today. And I just want to give you a round of applause and for making us better. So as we switch into our closing, I invite you to go to just the Padlet, and I'm going to get the screen sharing again. Would love for you to add just anything that you are taking for your leadership after our panel today. So let me go ahead and get the screen sharing.
Thanks, Melissa, for doing such a beautiful job moderating that student panel. Lots of props to Melissa and to Rhiannon for helping us coordinate that. Panelists, your words, as always, were so insightful, and I know will carry us and lift us as we launch into this year. Thanks to everyone for entering ideas into the Padlet. And I know we had some problems putting it into the YouTube chat, but you can find it in your email links, and you can also find it in the agenda. So please feel free to continue to add your questions and responses there. We appreciate hearing your voice, and it's also powerful just to hear from each other as well. So we just wanted to connect this to where we headed next for the rest of the day. And as you see, we're probably going to go a few minutes over, similar to our form, because we have a powerful closing video that we want to share with you. But after the video, we do very much hope you take a brain break. And you'll notice today and tomorrow, we have tried to put big chunks of time for breaks, half an hour for a morning break and then an hour for lunch. Please step away from the screen. It is important to get those eyes away from the digital component, go outside, breathe, stretch, relax. We encourage you to do so. And then after that, all of you, every single Central Valley teammate is invited to join our equity and affinity space groups. So please know that if you registered for a session, everyone was able to get their first choice session. So please, in the agenda, go to the links. You'll find all of the links to all of the spaces right in the agenda. The agenda will be your place to get all of your information. And if you were not able to register yet, we first would love to encourage you to go to an affinity group that feels right for you and your identity right now. And if that doesn't feel right, then please join us for one of the other opportunities. And we would encourage you to join the special session called What Are Affinity Groups? So you can find out a little bit more around our affinity groups. After that, we will be having a nice lunch, and then we have some content and collaborative sessions in the afternoon. Again, all of the links are in the agenda. I do just want to share that I am going to be having some office hours after we close up until about 10, and then from 11:30 to 12, and I have my Zoom room number and my password there. So please feel free to join if you're just confused around what session to go to. And then on the next slide, just want to connect our learning for the work tomorrow. And so in tomorrow, we will be starting with our instructional teammates. All instructional teammates are welcome to come, where we are going to do some introduction to our distance learning materials. And if you are a leader, an ed specialist, an intervention specialist, anyone who's not in the classroom but does instructional work, please pick one of the grade level spans to join. And we would encourage you to pick one and stay with it for the duration of the morning. The content will be similar across all of the sessions, but there will just be a few times and pieces when we have a laser-like focus on those respective grade levels. So I look forward to that. And then in the afternoon, we will be continuing the sessions that we're starting today. So with that, I think I'm passing it over to Tony.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kat. And well, can't even say enough for our young scholars. Thank you so much for dropping knowledge. I mean, you are speaking on concepts and ideas that I didn't learn until I was in graduate school at 40, and you're dropping it just off the top like it's automatic for you. And so just many thanks, appreciative. We're going to be better because of you. And I think we're always better the more we listen to our scholars. So just thank you for being on and sharing with us and helping make us better. And just know too that you're a role model for your younger siblings and other younger scholars that are at your schools now. And I saw in the chat, come back and hang out at our schools. You want a tutoring job over the summer, you want something to do, you want to be an avid tutor, come on down. We need you. And if you want to go on the teacher residency and come for real and teach, please, 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 we got a spot for you. So just come on, teach that ethnic studies class that you want, that we're going to have, come teach it. Okay. All right. And with that, we're going to take it home with a little video, little montage of just some celebrations at the end of last year. Again, just model for all the hard work. Rhiannon, thank you for coordinating this film with Film Twist and all the schools that did an incredible job to honor our seniors and graduates this last year.
Congratulations, Aspire Class of 2020. I stand before you today with extreme pride for all of the accomplishments that you've had from elementary school to middle school and high school. I know that this year has not been a year that you'd ever imagined, and there's things that are still uncertain. There's one thing that is certain though, and it's the impact that you've had on all of our lives. We are very proud of all of the work that you've done, and we cannot wait to see all of your accomplishments as you move on into our world. Know that you are forever a part of our Aspire family, and we look forward to hearing more about your accomplishments. Congratulations.
I wanted to express my heartfelt congratulations to the class of 2020 on your graduation day. I know this isn't quite the way you imagined celebrating or finishing out your high school experience, but for us, it just demonstrates the deep resilience that we know you've always had. Know that you are joining 4,000 other Aspire alumni who are out in the world pursuing their dreams, and whatever path you've chosen, we couldn't be more proud of you or more excited to see all the good that you will do in the world as you lead this next generation. So congratulations, class of 2020, and know that you always have a home here at Aspire.
Greetings, class of 2020. You and your family have been dreaming of this day. This class will always be special to me. In this class, we have students who have overcome some major obstacles. You were born during 9/11, and you will graduate high school during a pandemic. And yet, the world awaits for your courage and change based on all you have witnessed and experienced. And I will always know you to be the class who commenced a new way forward.
This is such a crazy moment in time, and your senior year has been a year like no other before. And I think that's kind of fitting. You're a graduating class that is truly like no other before. You all have style, personality, passion, humor, and love like no others I've seen before you. And I think that it is perfectly fitting because you all are going to do things like no other class has ever done before. You're going to serve our community and transform the world like no others before you. I am so proud of you. I'm excited for you. Congratulations, graduates. You're truly like no others before you.
Let this experience ground you in the knowledge that you are strong, flexible, and that you will overcome any obstacles in your path. Stay on your journey. You are equipped for success. We love you, class of 2020.
We know that we can believe in you as you move forward into this brave new world. and figuring out for all the rest of us how we're going to make it through times like this. We are all so incredibly proud of you, and we're really happy to be able to celebrate you.
Team, we just want to thank you for all that you've done. Thanks for joining us. We wish you a wonderful start to the school year, and we look forward to seeing you all in Zoom for now and hopefully in person in the near future. Please know that you're all in our hearts.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.